Welcome to session 2, the revision process. I want to talk about 4 things: the assignment itself, how grading is handled, the approach that I hope you will take in looking at this assignment, the way that I approach grading and giving feedback, and finally some resources that I find helpful that I hope will spur you to find resources that you will keep over the years, things that you find helpful. The assignment itself is, of course, in your course shell, and this information is available there, but I've highlighted a couple of items, things like clarification, resubmitting your paper from session 1, and further explanation and posing questions. So most of these are sort of the same: clarification and getting more information, a stronger explanation. When you look at my feedback, I want you to try to apply it. That's part of resubmitting your paper. What sounds simple may not feel as simple when you start working on it, so I want you to embrace that process and explore it, and that may lead to you wanting more clarification and further explanations. And part of that is what I'm going to talk about in how I approach giving feedback. But I want you to think about that as a process and a dialogue, because I'm going to do my best and you're going to do your best, but we're still going to have to keep working to find that place where we both completely understand one another. And that takes a little time and a little effort. And I also want to talk about, what these questions could look like, how you could pose them, and what sort of shape they would take, because that can feel overwhelming. It can feel as though we're looking for a specific type of question, but I want you to feel confident that you have everything you need to ask questions. The grading is basically 10 points. You're doing it. You're resubmitting your paper and you're asking some questions. I don't want you to think about this as like if I don't do well enough, I only get this many points. Doing this assignment, attempting it, is 10 points. So feel confident in that. So the approach. 1, we're going to resubmit the paper. So I give feedback, I try to be clear, I try to be focused, but that's not always going to happen. So I want you to think about a couple of features when you are revising. I want you to look up the terms that I give you. So maybe there's something where you feel like this sentence isn't quite right, but you don't really know what to look up to make that sentence better. So look for the terms and the links that I give you, because I can point out things like, hey, you're missing subject-verb agreement. So now you have a term and a search term, and you can go look that up. I also try to share links with you to get you started so that you don't feel like, okay, she said that's a problem, but what is that? I want you to feel able and ready to go look for it and tackle it. Ask questions. I'm trying to find that happy medium of not too much information, but also not too little. I'm not always going to hit the mark. So if it just doesn't make sense, you don't have to have a specific perfect question. You just have to sort of raise your hand and say, hey, I don't get it. What's going on here? Say more, say less. This doesn't make sense. Hopefully, over time, you start to gain the knowledge and experience to say, oh, I know what this term means, but I don't know how you're using it here. But that's not what we're looking at right now. We're looking at step 1, where I start to use all these words that you aren't familiar with. You know about content and writing, you know some basics, but maybe you're not familiar with all those words that you had to attempted to memorize like back in high school and things like that. I don't expect you to know all of those. That's what I'm providing so that you are able to look them up. So we're going to look at them and you're going to start asking questions, but a question can be as simple as, I don't get that. You made a comment on page 2 on the second paragraph. I don't get it. What are you talking about? And that lets me know exactly where the issue is, and then I can give you more insights. So what am I doing here? I'm not going to comment on every single thing. If you have a comma problem, I'm going to comment on it and give you some links and some insights, but then I want you to go find more. If I correct all of them, I'm going to correct them the way that I like to write and the way that I like to approach writing, but that's sort of hindering your voice. So writing is very much you expressing yourself. It's how we talk, it's how we walk. All those different things go together into who we are and our own particular voice. So I give you insights, I give you approaches, I give you options, but it's up to you to figure out what you like, what works for you. So I'm going to give you a range of feedback. I'm going to comment on one particular item. I may say, you have subject-verb agreement wrong here. This is how you could go about fixing that. But then it's up to you to say, okay, is this the only time I made that error, or did I make it multiple times? And to go look for it, because that's going to give you the insight you need to further your voice. And also look for comments about what you're doing right because I do want to comment on that. I do want to point out where you're doing really well, because I want you to see that you do have this, that of course there are things you can increase in. I still look at my writing that way. There are plenty of things I can increase in and keep growing in. But there are also things that over time I figured out and that I do well. So I want to share that same idea with you, that there are things you do know, things that you are quite good at. So look for those comments. Don't look at it and say, oh, there are so many comments. They must all be bad. No, they're not. So read all of them. This is about dialogue. So when I make a comment and I say, hey, I don't like how this is going, or this isn't working for me, it's your opportunity to say, well, she's given me some insights into why she doesn't think it's working. But maybe you think it does, or maybe you have a different kind of solution, or you had a different way that you were attempting to approach it. That's the opportunity for dialogue, because you get to say, actually, I really like this. So how could I tweak it differently? I don't like your solution. I want a different one, but I don't know where to go with that. Those are the kinds of things you need to say, because it helps me figure out the best way for you to share your voice. You may want to, you may have a really good reason for why you've done something in particular. So argue your case. Say, this is why I did it, and that's why I think it's going to work. Part of everything that I'm doing is challenging you, because I want you to think about your process and your approach. And if more often than not, you can give me a good argument on why you're doing something, it helps you increase your confidence, and it helps us both see where you want to go and how you want to approach things. So don't take it as, she said I had to do ABC. Look at it and say, she suggested that. So what do I think? Why did she suggest that? Why does she think it's better this other way? And what do I think? Do I think it really is better that way? Do I like it? So ask those kinds of questions. It's perfectly okay. Finally, some resources. There are lots of great books, things like Pocket Key for Writers that we're looking at here. The APA Style Guide is good to have. In other courses, we use the Bedford Handbook. My go-to recommendation whenever you want to be a better writer is to look at Strunk and White's Elements of Style. There are two websites that I'm generally going to link you to. The Purdue OWL, the online writing lab of Purdue University, is a great opportunity to look for not just stuff about papers and APA and MLA, but to also look at things like letters and resumes, because they cover a lot of different topics. So keep it not just for this course or for English courses, but for life skills, because they have lots of good information. It's a searchable database, so I want you to start looking at it and saying, how can I search this? How can I get comfortable with this? So that you always find what you need. Finally, citation machines. Sometimes they call them citation engines. bibme.org is the one I use. You may already have another one that you like, but I want to encourage you to find one that's useful, because they walk you through how to approach references. So they are good to have around. I definitely still use them. If I'm doing a lot of books, I just take the ISBN numbers, the long number on the back of a book or just inside the front cover. And when you type that in, you can end up getting an entire book. All the information will pop up right there in that citation machine for you. So look for ways to make life faster, better, and easier. Look at all those different ones, see what works for you. Use my ideas as jumping off points to find what really works for you. So have fun with this. As always, that's my big idea, is to not just do the project, but realize that there's a purpose and a plan for each project. And if you ever feel that you aren't quite getting that plan or that purpose, you reach out and you ask a question. It doesn't have to be a perfect question. It's just saying, I don't get this. What's going on? Help. And from there, we can always find a solution. So have a great week, and I'll see you out there in the course shell.